I want to show you a technique I use when editing, and I feel like it saves me a lot of time, but I don't see a lot of other editors doing this. A lot of people, when they're editing audio specifically, they do keyframe audio levels. So when they want to adjust volume, they use keyframes, as you can see here. So this is a pretty typical structure for something like a music bed or something in an edit, where you'd want to start off a little bit louder and then maybe come down in volume as people start talking or something else is happening in audio, and then come back up at the end as you ramp up to conclude. Now, as you can see, this project is not set up in any way that's organized. This is not how you should do a project. I haven't even saved this. It's untitled. So definitely don't set your project up like this. I've got another video where you can see how to set up your project. But what I wanted to show you was a technique that I do for audio that I feel like it saves me quite a bit of time, especially when you're doing this over and over and over again. Oftentimes your edit is fluid and it's changing. So messing around with audio levels with keyframes and the pen tool is not going to be your friend. I actually prefer this method. And what I do is I've got a clip, and this is a continuous clip. It's the exact same clip that's over here. And you can tell that because you've got these handy little markers here that shows you that it's the exact same clip, that this edit is this side and that side match perfectly. And I don't know, Premiere didn't have this for a long time, and I'm really glad they added it. Final Cut had it forever. And you turn it on right here, show through edits. Make sure that's highlighted so you can see when something is a continuous clip. In the past, it was really hard to tell if they were two different clips or if it was a different timing in the clip. Now you can see if something's up against itself, it'll tell you with these little triangles here. But anyway, what I do is I do a very similar structure as over here. Start off with a louder clip. So under volume, I'd set it to 0 dB, and then come over here to this clip and set it to -8. And at the end, come up here and again, keep it to 0. And I don't want to mess with the keyframes at all. Keyframes get really, really cumbersome, especially when you're retiming. You might have your project set up like this, and it might look great, and it sounds great, and it works great, and your audio dips down when it needs to. But what happens if you want to get rid of this clip, let's say, and you need to retime this whole section? Well, you could drag this over and, let's see, butt this up against, pull this back. But now you got those keyframes over here that aren't there, and you'd have to do something like this maybe, but you got to pull this up, and now there's a keyframe way over here to the left that you can't see anymore. So maybe you're like, okay, that's not how I want to do it. Go back and you pull this over, right? But then you're trying to keep your positioning correct so that it stays on the same level. So then you can pull it over, get your timing just right where you want it. Same deal here, pull this one over, and then slide your clip over, drag this down, butt these up against each other, and there you go. You got your new timing, right? And you hold shift to kind of move that in, shift here again to get your timing exactly right. And you're like, oh man, I want it. Where do I want this? What time code do I want? I don't know. It should be about 5 seconds or so. Screw all that. I don't want to do that. Especially I don't want to do that over and over and over again. So what I do is I use constant gain. Now, I've shown this to a couple of my editing friends, and they're like, I don't like that because it doesn't sound right. Well, you got to make sure your audio transitions set to crossfade at constant gain. By default, I think Premiere defaults to constant power. You don't want that one. That one will make it sound weird. If you use constant gain, essentially what's going to happen is it's going to fade from the louder audio into the quieter audio. And because it's the exact same clip, all that's changing over this crossfade is the volume itself. So when you want to retime something, say you want to get rid of this clip, right? Well, you can do exactly that. You just pull this over, line that up, make a new edit, and apply default transition. You're done. And let's say, okay, so say you want, you'd have to bump this up. Sorry, you're not done. There you go. Bump that up. Now you're doing the exact same thing, 0 dB down to -8, and you've retimed it, and you got it all done just like that. And this comes in really handy, especially when you want to be precise, when you want to make sure that the middle of your fade is exactly on a specific edit point or a specific time, specific frame, whatever it is. You can line it up. You can type the exact duration you want for your fade. Whereas with the keyframe method, you've got to be very particular with where you're putting things. You can be very granular, But I find that doing this, and then you can like try to go up and down. Okay, so you want to raise it up to like what? Let's say it should be, instead of 0, it should be at like 8, or 6. That's as high as we can go. So let's say 3, right? So we're going to get 3. All right, I'm really trying to dial in. Oh, no, missed it. 2.99. All right, that's as close as I'm going to get. Whereas with this other method, you can just go in, dial 3, you're done. And that way when you play it, it's loud, gets quiet, gets loud again, and you can retime all day long as much as you want. Don't have to worry about moving keyframes around, shifting stuff. You just cut, copy, paste, do your whole thing, apply default transitions, boom, you're done. I think it's so much easier. It's so much more visual too. You don't have to worry about hidden keyframes like you did over here. If someone drags a clip, maybe it's another editor in the project, they drag the clip over and they're doing this kind of stuff, and you're like, well, I want it to be louder over here. Well, then you got these valleys and mountains to deal with. It's just a hassle. And trust me, this is how I started. I learned editing in Final Cut doing this kind of editing with keyframes. And I get it. There are people who this is their process, this is how they want to do it, and they like to be very meticulous, but it wastes so much time. The keyframes slow everything down, and I don't want to be sitting there spending all day just on my audio keyframes because I decided to delete a few clips. I'd much rather delete the clips, retime it, and get it over here like this, and have it sound exactly the same and be able to adjust my transition length if I want to, do whatever I need to. The other cool thing about this is you can add specific effects. Like oftentimes I'll add an EQ so like let's say this section is where someone's talking, so I don't want those higher end frequencies competing with their voice. So I'll add an EQ to this middle clip, come in here, knock my highs down, maybe even pull my mids down, and expand that out a little bit, so that when I've got the full music track over here, and then as it goes into the talking portion where I've got an interview or something, the music, we kind of lose those high-end frequencies. So the volume comes down and we pull those frequencies out so it's not competing. You hear the dialogue coming through crystal clear, and then it all just fades back up into the full track, the music song, whatever it might be. And doing it this way is really convenient because it's all just on those transitions. And like I said, it's the exact same clip. So all you're changing is the blending of the EQ effect or the blending of the volume. And I'm sure a lot of people know how to do it, but this apply default transition, if you pick an effect over here, so if we clear that out and we go over to audio transitions, crossfade, you right click and you select it as default transition. That will make it so when you make an edit and you apply default transition, you get the constant gain instead of constant power or exponential fade, the other ones. You can play around with those, certainly, if you like the sound of them, but I've had much better success with constant gain. And this defaulted right now to a 5-second transition, but if you're doing this across the board, like across a big edit, what you can do is go up to your general settings and set your audio transition default duration to, let's say, 3 seconds, because you say you always want a 3-second transition. Boom, you got a 3-second transition. It's as easy as that. And if you really want, you might know this as well, but let's say we didn't have any of these, and we had a bunch of just cuts, and we can see it's the same clip. We want to add transitions. If you hold Option and you drag, it's Command and drag, you can pick just the transitions and apply your default transitions to all of them. Again, that's Command drag, and you can select all of them. Super handy feature that wasn't in Final Cut that I wanted forever, because I used to in Final Cut, I'd do this like one at a time, and it was so tedious, but Premiere makes it really easy. When Premiere's being stable and not crashing, it makes it really easy, but lately I've had a few issues with that, but that's a whole nother story. So try it out. I highly recommend it. It might take some getting used to, especially if you're used to keyframes like this. This is probably not going to be normal or natural for you. You're going to probably hate it at first, but this is something that was like, just like that necessary evil where I just got used to it. And then one day I was like, man, there has to be a better way to do this, because keyframes just suck in general. The only thing that does keyframes well is After Effects. Premiere's keyframes, no thank you. So this is just gross. I'd much rather be over here, and then I can see, oh, I want this to be 6 dB. I want this one to be -12, whatever it is, right? And you can go back and forth and go all day long. Much easier than the keyframes, especially for like music scoring and stuff like that. Oh, so much easier. Oh, another thing I would recommend, there's a bunch of different ways. This is just like an add-on. You can stop the video if you got the tip you wanted, but there's a bunch of ways in Premiere to adjust your audio. You can adjust your audio on the track with the audio track mixer sequence 1. This, I do not recommend this. It is so hidden and so in the background that the moment anyone else opens your project, or say you open a project for someone else and they mixed and they put the track down, no thanks, because you can even pick your layers and stuff. I never use this. Close that. Get out of there. I do exactly what I was doing this whole time, where I go into my effect controls and I set my clip levels. The only other thing I might do is I might do an audio gain to the track itself. If for whatever reason it's really low and I'm not taking it through Audition or something like that, you can set the gain or adjust gain by, and you can knock it down to -6. But you'll see the waveforms actually change. So if you do that, let's say someone gets really fancy and they go in audio gain and they adjust gain, they set it way low. You come into a project and you're sitting there, man, what happened? Who recorded these levels? What were they thinking? And I'm all the way up at +6 and I got nothing. Then you go in and you check the gain and you see that someone said, oh, they set it to -18. That's why it's so low. So I usually avoid that because it's not as clear. And a lot of times if you're collaborating on a project, working with other editors, it is a nightmare trying to figure out other people's workflow. And so what I do is I like to make everything really clear, really obvious. So when someone opens up, they can see exactly what I did. They might question me and they might wonder why I put all these freaking crossfades on here, but hopefully they can take a second to look and be like, oh, I see what he did. That's pretty smart. Oh, okay, I get it. Rather than doing stuff like adjusting the gain, way down to like -23 or something, and wondering why the waveforms are so low, because that looks like someone messed up on set. Someone made a mistake. So I don't like to do that. Less confusion, the better, so that people can keep moving, because that's the thing. You want to speed up. You don't want to slow down the process by asking questions. That's why it's so important. Keep your projects organized. Put stuff in its place, so that way in 6 months, a year from now, when you open an old project, you know where to look, and oh, okay, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was doing. Because guaranteed in 6 months or a year, you're not going to remember. There are so many old projects that I've gone back to, and I'm thanking my past self because I actually organized things right, or stuff's where it's supposed to be, and I am kicking myself if it's not. I linked to a file that was on my desktop and I don't have that desktop anymore. Shame on me. Don't do that. Keep everything organized in Finder, in Premiere, and keep all your stuff, all your audio, all your video stuff, keep it all organized, neat and tidy for other people and for yourself down the road in the future.